Hi, I'm Allie. If you've ever wondered how to increase or decrease brick stitch, this is the video for you. Make sure to watch the whole way, looking and seeing how it gets started increasing, then decreases back at the end to finish off with the wire guard. Remember, if you need any supplies, check the links in the description below. If you're on a mobile, go ahead and click that little down arrow below the video on the right-hand side. So for these earrings, we're really going to go into how to increase and decrease our brick stitch. So you may already know brick stitch, and what we're really going to concentrate on, like I said, is how do we know when to add more, and having a pattern that you are following is going to make it easier to realize and know the stitch when you are actually needing to add or needing to subtract. One thing to keep in mind as you're looking at brick stitch is it's the same thing as peyote. So you could do the same design, just the beads are facing a different way on the lateral versus the horizontal. We're going to be going horizontal, and I'm starting with the bottom and working my way up. Now you can start somewhere in the middle and then save a little extra thread, but we're going to learn as we go. So I have on some 0.006 wildfire beading thread with a stop bead at the end, and I have about 4 feet of my thread on a size 10 needle. I'm going to start at the bottom, which may not seem traditional, but again, we're using this as a learning process. So how would you start brick stitch at the bottom with 1 bead? I'm going to start by basically creating almost a second stop bead. I'm adding the black bead here, and I'm going to be using 5 different colors of Delicas. If you need the list of those, make sure to look below the video in the description. That little show more button will get you links to the site. I'm going to sew so you'll see a little bit of thread on the exterior of the bottom. I have that 1 thread going through. From here, we're going to add 2 more beads on top. We're going to go back through that same black bead, force those 2 beads to sit right next to each other. So see how they want to sit there in that triangle naturally anyway? Just kind of push them down so they do. And once you get those to sit nicely, sometimes it'll take going with your needle here and just say, sit nice, guy. We're going to take 1 more piece of thread and go to the exterior and up from our bottom of our first bead to the top of our second bead. And that's going to get our triangle here at the bottom that we're going to expand our brick stitch on. Now I'm adding or growing the brick stitch. So I know that this one has 1 bead, this one has 2. My next row is going to have 3 beads. Naturally, every time you start out doing a new row in brick stitch, you're going to pick up 2 beads. I'm going to pick up 1 black bead and 1 of my galvanized dark berry beads. Because I only have 1 bridge thread there, it makes it easy. I know that I'm sewing underneath that 1 bridge thread, which is going to refer to a thread that connects 1 bead to the other. So that's our bridge thread right there. I'm sewing underneath the bridge thread, and I prefer to sew toward me, letting those beads fall next to one another. And I'm going to sew back up through the berry bead towards the top. When you sew back up through the bead, you want to make sure that your needle and thread are not going back underneath that bridge thread. If that happens to happen, your bead will fall off, and you'll know that you did that by accident. Now, I don't have another bridge thread here to connect to, but I want to add another bead. I'm going to add another one of my black beads here, and I'm going to catch onto that same bridge thread. So that same thread, I'm kind of tucking underneath there, adding the bead, and then I sew back up through that same black bead and up towards the top. Pull nice and tight, and just by adding another bead along that bridge thread row, that is how we're getting the look of adding or having an additional bead on. The next one, we're going to add another additional bead. So I'm going to start out with my black bead here, and then my burgundy bead. And if you want to, you can draw your own brick stitch pattern that you can have on our downloadable. We'll put that also in the description of the video. You can download, draw your own brick stitch pattern from the graph paper on our site, or you can go and get this pattern as well from there. So here I am sewing, and I have my 2 beads on. I'm going to catch as I increase to that first bridge thread. So 2 beads always go on, and I'm going to sew back up through bead number 2. Give a nice tight pull, and that helps to make the row before it sit nicely. Now I'm going to do one bead at a time, catching on to the next bridge thread there, sewing underneath the bridge thread, and we have lots of brick stitch videos, so if you're having trouble at all, make sure you can check those out too. Go back up through the bead. You can see I'm not pulling tightly until I go back and do that final pull. From here, I know I want to add a fourth bead. There's no bridge thread, so that's how I know I'm going to go in and share the bridge thread that I've already sewn through to put on the third bead as I put on this fourth. And give a nice tight pull. Row number 5. Same deal here. I'm going in and adding 2 beads, always to the start of the row, catching on to the first bridge thread because I'm adding beads, doing more. If I wanted to decrease and just have 3 beads, we'll get to that, I'm going to skip over to the second bridge thread. Adding, stay to the first bridge thread. That automatically kicks that black bead over off to the side and naturally increases the width of my row to an extra bead. So back up through bead number 2, and that gets me that second bead. Now that first bead there doesn't really want to cooperate. It doesn't want to sit nicely because it doesn't have the thread sitting lateral back up through it. Don't worry about that. As we use and increase the next row, we'll catch on to that bridge thread there between those first 2 beads, and that'll help to make it sit appropriately. From here, I'm going to continue on with my V pattern. So I'm going to go in with my galvanized galvanized apricot gold here and add that one in. And that's going to sit in the middle. So back up through and straighten that out. From here, another one of my berry beads goes on, catching on to that the next bridge thread. And then once again, as I get to the end, I realize, oh no, there's not another bridge thread. That just means that I share the bridge thread. Helpful hint when you're sharing a bridge thread, you want to, as much as possible, try to make this second thread that's sharing the bridge thread go to the left of the last one, because I want it to sit to the left. So I don't want those threads to be intertwined. I want it to sit towards the left there. And then back up through that bead. And give a nice tight pull. I'm going to do the same thing for the next row, adding a black and a berry, then 2 golds in the middle, another berry, and another black. So I'm going to increase to get up to this next line here, 2, and then the third line the next line as I increase will include one of my blue beads. And then we're going to start concentrating on decreasing and how to get that feathered look along the side. Once you finish your 7th row, you're going to have 7 beads on because we've been increasing. So we went from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, 7 beads. As we do row 8, we are going to decrease. So you can see in the pattern here, we did our last row with our black beads, and we're going to decrease by 1, going to 6 beads. We're then going to increase back to 7, 6, 7, 6, 7. So we're going to get that decrease, increase happening regularly. So this is a great practice run. So just like every other step here, whoops, I'm so used to trying to add that black bead first, we're going to add in our first 2 beads, which are going to be our bronze color, that berry color, and our gold. We're going to skip over the first bridge thread, and you're going to sew through the second bridge thread. That's going to naturally decrease the stitch, so there's 1 bead for every bridge thread. I'm sewing back up through that second gold bead, just like we would normally do. And then I'm getting ready to add my 2 center beads, which are going to be 2 blue beads. So I'm going to put in that blue, oops, that's a black one there. Let's take that guy off. Let's do that. Jump it in there, grab my blue beads here at the top. Just a tiny bit of a color difference, but it works. And then go back up through that one. And then as I finish out this row, I'm going to end up, again, with 6 beads, because there's 6 bridge threads. Catching the beads between those 7 beads, there's 6 threads at the top. Coming over here then, I'm going to add my gold and my berry. Now we're going to increase and decrease with every single row as we progress on toward the top of the design. Not until the very top here are we going to start going down then again from 6 to 5, 4, 3, 2, and then we're going to stop at 2 and add our wire guard. So I'm going to go up here and back through that berry bead. Now what I'm going to do is get ready once again to start increasing. So I'm from 6 and now I'm going to 7. So 2 beads are going to go on. I'm going to start with my nice mint color here, and then I'm going to start with my berry bead. I'm going to, since I'm increasing, not skip over to the second bridge thread. I'm staying to the first bridge thread. Letting those beads lay on top of, or beside each other, back up through the berry, and kind of locking that in place. Continuing on, we're starting to decrease our diamond, even though we're increasing our count from 6 to 7 beads, and back up through the gold. And this is going to be the last of my little blue beads then that I add right in the middle here at the top. I'm going to go the whole way over, adding in blue, gold, berry, and then my green. And then we're going to get ready once again to decrease a row as we go in and go from 7 beads once again, repeating to 6 beads. And that's going to be the pattern for a while, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, as we build length and create this little kind of fringed peyote looking side to get that feathered look. So as I finish my 10th row here, we go back to that 6 count, and then the 11th row is going to go back to the 7 count. So I'm going to start that 7 count with 2 greens, once again sharing 1, just going to that first bridge thread, so 2 beads go into that 1 bridge thread. Because there's only, when you have 6 beads, there's only 5 bridge threads connecting those 6 beads. So you're going to have to double up on both the ends. So 2 beads go over there to the end. And you can see I'm getting ready to finish my gold triangle there, or my gold diamond rather. Putting my berry on, and then the next row will finish up the berry. And increasing as I go in, or we'll get ready to finish up the berry rather. And then just continuing with the counts of increasing or decreasing. So when we increase, both the first bridge thread and the last bridge thread basically have 2 beads that sit into it. That's when we're increasing. When we're decreasing, every bead gets a bridge thread. All right, now as I go in and do that last row, you can see that last bead that didn't want to kind of cooperate. You're going to force that into place. And you can naturally see now if I wanted to continue with that triangle and decrease, I could decrease, but I need another bead there on the side. So I'm going to sew underneath those 2 beads, catch onto that bridge thread, and then really with this one, as I pull my thread and needle through there, I want to click that last bead in place and give it a nice tight pull. So once again, I was 7 beads for row number 11. Then I'm going to go to row number 12 and go back down to 6. That's going to be 2 greens, 2 of my my berry beads in the middle, and then 2 more greens. As you increase the length of your project and get that nice length that you want, and honestly you can make it any length that you want, you're going to notice that the pattern starts for the increase and decreasing as you go in and learn that and become really efficient at that. The rows where you have 6 green beads are all that green color. When you have 7, you're going to make a black bead line up with the top of that triangle or that diamond shape. So constantly you're going to do 6, then 7 with a black bead in the middle. 6 green, 7 black bead in the middle. 6 green, 7. So you know as you are increasing or doing that 7th one, the 4th bead or the odd count bead in creates that nice singular row of the every other almost zippered up look of that black bead. So I'm going to continue building in more and more of my rows the whole way up till I start to decrease. The decreasing is going to happen after I have a total of 7 of my black beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or sorry, 8 black beads. After your 8th black bead row, then we're going to start to decrease. So we're going from an increasing to an every other, and then we're going to finish up with decreasing at the top. So after 8 rows of adding in the black beads here, you're going to start to decrease then. So after that 8th row with the black bead in, I've done another row, decreasing to 6. And then as I go down here, it becomes really quick and easy. That once again, my 2 beads are going on and I'm continuing to decrease now. So I'm going to decrease to 5 beads. And as I decrease to 5 beads, I'm going to add that middle black bead always to the odd number. So 3. That black bead goes in there. And then once again with that decreasing, super easy because you don't have to add any multiple beads to any bridge thread. You're just going in, pulling that bridge thread up and decreasing. Now as I go down to row 4, and always make sure you're tucking in that last bead. As I go down to 4 beads in this row, 2 beads go on, skip over the first bridge thread, go to the second, and I'm going to sew back up through. And then this one is all green, just like we've been doing, that every other line has a black bead in it. And there's my line of 4. And then as I do my line of 3 now, once again, I'm doing 2 beads at once, so it's my green and my black bead this time. Skipping over to that second bridge thread, sewing under, and going black up through that black bead. Green bead goes on, sewing through, back up through. I'm going to finish this project with a row of 2 beads. So we're going in now, I'm adding my 2 so you can see how fast that top goes as we decrease. Pulling that nice and tight then, going back up through that second bead. And to get that first bead to really lay and cooperate, and we'll go back and kind of tuck in those sides too as we get further and further down, increasing and decreasing, you're going to grab your wire guard. And I'm choosing one of these rose gold or copper. I'm coming out of the top of my last bead, going around the top of my wire guard here, back down through bead number 2. Well, actually bead number 1 from the previous row. Because bead number 1 never wants to sit right, we're going to correct that by going through the bridge thread that sits right underneath and then back up through that Delica bead. As I pull then, look, it goes perfectly back into place. Go through the wire guard, starting at one side, going down the other side, and then I'm just going to, not only does that reinforce, but that gives me an opportunity to tighten up my thread, bring my thread down through the sides, and then all I'm going to do to finish this off is go down through that next bead in line, sewing down almost like you're in a peyote stitch. I'm going to go underneath that bridge thread to make that bead cooperate. Go back up through that bead that your thread was currently coming out of. Give a nice tight pull to get that to sit in place. And now I'm going to reverse the bead thread once again. So I'm not going to end up knotting anywhere. I'm just reversing the thread, which is going to lock that thread in place. So I'm going down a row, making sure that I don't see the thread showing anywhere. Because when you do the brick stitch with the Delicas or any sort of Delica pattern like this, it's really tight between the Delica beads. So as we lock these in place, I'm just turning the thread, meaning I'm switching the direction, which way it goes. You can see that I'm grabbing with my pliers a little bit as I'm pulling that size 10 needle through. And then I'm going to go back up through here, straighten this one out, and then just go in with my thread burner as I'm coming down the side here and just burn off the thread to finish this off. Likewise, along the bottom, we're not going to concentrate on making this complicated at all. We're just going to take our thread burner, because it's already basically a stop bead, having the thread go through that black bead twice, move that stop bead out of the way, burn that thread down, and then burn it flush against the project at the very end, which is going to sit right inside that a hole of that last bead to finish up the design. Only thing you have to do now is put on your ear wire, and your increasing and decreasing knowledge should have expanded greatly as you finish off your earrings. Thanks so much for joining me in creating these lovely brick stitch earrings. Remember, if you need any supplies, want to check out the links to create your own pattern or check out the pattern, go ahead and look below the video in the description. Click that little show more button to get links to shop with us or to find these free online, that pattern and that tutorial. Remember also, if you want to, you can give a little thumbs up, comment if you're making any color changes or things that you think are helpful that others would love to learn from. As always, thanks so much for joining me. Have fun wearing your earrings and stay tuned for the next video.